You know what I think? I think it's just it brings to light things that wouldn't normally be brought to light.
When Hulk Hogan passed away, the world was told he had gone peacefully, but his daughter Brooke believes there's far more to the story, and now she's ready to expose everything. She has begun naming names of WWE wrestlers, and what she's revealing is nothing short of shocking. Let's break it down. The wrestling world was stunned when Hogan died of cardiac arrest on July 24, 2025, at the age of 71, but what should have been a time of mourning quickly spiraled into something darker. Brooke Hogan is now reportedly speaking out, pointing to wrestlers who may have played a role in her father's downfall, and she isn't the only one raising questions. Conspiracy theories have flooded platforms like X and Reddit, with fans speculating that certain WWE figures may have had a hand in Hogan's death. The most explosive claim suggests Vince McMahon himself silenced Hogan because he knew too much about McMahon's alleged sex trafficking scandal, with the timing of Hogan's death appearing suspiciously convenient amid McMahon's mounting legal troubles. What makes this theory especially chilling is the long and well-documented history of animosity between Hogan and wrestling's power brokers, fueled by decades of backstage manipulation and corporate betrayals that went far beyond normal wrestling politics. The conspiracy theories only grew louder as fans began connecting Hogan's many feuds to the suspicious circumstances of his death. On social media, some claim that computer nerds had allegedly taken out both Scott Hall and Hogan after they spoke up, while others speculated about cult rituals involving 3 heroes or kings arranged by WWE-linked groups. As wild as these theories sound, they reflect a deep distrust of WWE's official narrative and the company's track record of burying uncomfortable truths. Perhaps no rivalry was more bitter or more personal than Hogan's feud with Jesse "The Body" Ventura, whose hatred for him went beyond wrestling storylines and into real-life betrayal. When asked if he could ever reconcile with Hogan, Ventura's response made it clear just how deep that resentment ran.
Brett lost, and Brett told me to go in the ring and wrestle him, and I won the belt right after Brett wrestled him, and then the deal was for me to drop it back to Yokozuna. And then Brett got in my face and said, you're supposed to drop the belt to me. I said, no, I'm not.
This wasn't just wrestling drama. It was a real betrayal that destroyed lives and careers. Ventura uncovered Hogan's treachery during a federal deposition when Vince McMahon, under oath, confirmed that Hogan was the informant who sabotaged unionization efforts back in 1986. Hogan had literally sold out every wrestler in the business to protect his own financial interests, earning more than the entire locker room combined, while his colleagues struggled without basic protections. The consequences of this betrayal stretched far beyond personal grudges. It fundamentally reshaped the future of workers' rights in professional wrestling, costing performers millions in lost benefits and protections over the decades that followed. And Ventura wasn't the only one who despised Hogan. Bret Hart also carried deep resentment over Hogan's backstage politics, particularly the infamous WrestleMania 9 incident, where Hogan used his creative control to steal what should have been Hart's crowning moment. The tension only escalated when Hart later confronted Hogan about dropping the title to him, sparking a heated backstage showdown that would define their relationship for years.
Never.
What?
Can't trust him. I'm not friends with anyone I don't trust. And he's the one that ratted me to Vince when I tried to unionize.
This wasn't just creative differences, it was Hogan systematically using his influence to bury talent and secure his spot at the top. Bret Hart accused Hogan of refusing to lose cleanly to him and of lying about future plans, painting Hogan as the kind of person who would flatly say, "I'm not doing business with you," when asked to put another wrestler over. The impact on Hart's career was enormous. What should have been his defining moment as champion was stolen through Hogan's backstage maneuvering, forever altering the path of one of wrestling's greatest technical wrestlers. The conspiracies surrounding Hogan take an even darker turn when considering Randy Savage, whose relationship with Hogan crumbled from close friendship into outright hostility. What had once appeared to be an unbreakable bond became one of wrestling's most bitter personal feuds. Even Hogan himself admitted their friendship fell apart under the weight of jealousy and personal misunderstandings.
Macho Man, when he lived on the beach here, we were together every single day. And then when he went through a divorce, he thought I had something to do with it. That turned out to be like an 8-year don't talk to each other.
According to documented reports, the feud between Hogan and Randy Savage went far beyond silence. Scott Steiner backed up claims that Savage admitted to punching Hogan and giving him a black eye before WrestleMania 9, fueled by paranoia over Hogan's closeness with Miss Elizabeth. This wasn't kayfabe, it was real violence born from real hatred. Hogan was left scrambling to explain his injuries, eventually blaming a jet ski accident rather than admitting he had been assaulted by his former best friend. Even more unsettling are the conspiracy theories involving The Undertaker, whose early career was nearly derailed by Hogan's false accusations. After their 1991 Survivor Series match, Hogan claimed The Undertaker's move injured his neck and left him nearly paralyzed, but later video evidence proved the move had been executed flawlessly. Some now wonder if The Undertaker, forced to fight for his job and reputation because of Hogan's lies, carried a quiet resentment that lasted decades. The relationship between Hogan and Vince McMahon was just as volatile, marked by power struggles and mutual distrust that went far beyond normal business disputes. Their dynamic was complex, built on need, but poisoned by constant tension over creative control and financial decisions.
It was a love-hate relationship, you know. He thought he knew best, I thought I knew best. So it was always a tug-of-war with me and him, but, you know, we seemed to click and make it work.
The tug-of-war between Hogan and McMahon took a far darker turn during the 1994 steroid trial, where Hogan testified against McMahon in exchange for immunity, admitting to their shared steroid use. Although McMahon was acquitted, the betrayal cut deep, and the rift between them never fully healed. Some conspiracy theorists even suggest this decades-old resentment may have played a role in the suspicious circumstances of Hogan's death. McMahon's later remark that Hogan was not as big as he thinks he is revealed the bitterness that lingered between them for years. Yet perhaps the most chilling and bizarre theory claims that Rey Mysterio Jr. is allegedly a serial killer who murdered multiple wrestlers and has now been questioned in connection to Hogan's death. While the accusation sounds outrageous, its very existence shows the level of distrust fans have in wrestling's ability to cover up uncomfortable truths. The theory gained momentum as fans began linking the deaths of several wrestlers associated with Mysterio, creating a narrative of systematic elimination that, though unproven, reflects the paranoia surrounding wrestling's darker side. The timing of Hogan's death also fueled suspicion, especially after radio host Bubba the Love Sponge claimed Hogan was on his deathbed and unable to speak claims. Hogan's team strongly denied just days before his passing. The sudden shift from Hogan's camp denying health problems to the announcement of his death created a perfect storm of suspicion, with fans questioning whether WWE and his inner circle had deliberately hidden the truth about his condition for business reasons. But Hogan's enemies in wrestling were only part of the story. His personal scandals and shady behavior built an entirely different set of enemies, some with even stronger motives to want him gone. The dark legacy of scandals, secrets, and controversy defined much of Terry Bollea's later years. The most explosive revelation came in 2015 when leaked audio from a 2007 sex tape captured Hogan repeatedly using racial slurs while discussing his daughter Brooke's dating life. What made the scandal particularly devastating wasn't just the language itself, but the context. It exposed a man whose private beliefs were the complete opposite of the wholesome public image he had built under Hulkamania. The leaks didn't stop there. More audio surfaced, in which Hogan spoke about fearing reincarnation as a black man because of karma following his son Nick's car accident. Remarks that critics described as proof of deep-seated racism far beyond casual prejudice. These revelations shattered his reputation, painting a picture of a man whose worldview was completely at odds with the values he preached, and creating enemies not just among wrestling fans, but within entire communities who had once seen him as a role model. When Hogan was finally forced to address his racist remarks, his attempts to explain only dug the hole deeper, exposing the full extent of his personal crisis and the stark contradiction between his public persona and private beliefs.
I was at the lowest point of my life. My personal life was destroyed. I was very mad at my daughter. I was upset over a situation that happened between her and her boyfriend, and I had no idea I was being taped. I was to the point where I wanted to kill myself.
But Hogan's attempts to explain only made things worse as he tried to justify his racist remarks by blaming his environment and upbringing. His response revealed not only the depth of his prejudice, but also a complete lack of awareness about why his words were so destructive.
Are you a racist?
No, I'm not. I'm not a racist, but a lot of people need to realize that you inherit things from your environment. And where I grew up was South Tampa, Port Tampa, and it was a really rough neighborhood, very low income. And all my friends, we greeted each other saying that word.
This wasn't just a slip of the tongue, it was a glimpse into decades of ingrained prejudice carefully hidden behind the Hulkamania image. The fallout was immediate and devastating, with WWE terminating his contract, stripping him from their Hall of Fame, and effectively erasing him from wrestling history until his controversial reinstatement in 2018. The damage extended far beyond WWE as sponsors dropped him and venues canceled appearances, leaving him to face financial repercussions that lasted for years. Yet the racism scandal was only the beginning. The 2007 sex tape that exposed his racist comments also revealed another painful betrayal this time, involving his closest friend, Bubba the Love Sponge. The sting was sharper because it came from someone Hogan trusted completely, someone he had allowed into his most private moments.
They're pointing to a very good friend of mine, Bubba the Love Sponge, and to this day I would have to see the tape to believe that, and I haven't seen the tape because they say there's a verbal reference and a on-camera appearance after I'm gone that, puts him in the hot seat, but, he's been such a close friend.
The betrayal by Bubba the Love Sponge was more than personnel. It was a violation of trust that carried years of legal and financial fallout. Hogan's lawsuit against Gawker Media ended with a $140 million judgment, later settled for $31 million. Still nice. $31 million, but the damage to his reputation and relationships could never be undone. The case, famously funded by billionaire Peter Thiel in retaliation for his own feud with Gawker, became a landmark moment in privacy law that ultimately bankrupted the outlet. Yet for Hogan, it also meant years of public humiliation and relentless legal scrutiny. But perhaps even more damaging than the racist remarks or sex tape scandal was his forced admission of steroid use during the 1994 federal trial against Vince McMahon. This wasn't simply about personal drug use. It exposed a culture of deception and performance enhancement that Hogan himself had helped create and promote across the wrestling industry. His admission of taking anabolic steroids for nearly 14 years while publicly projecting a clean, wholesome image revealed a hypocrisy that even shocked his most loyal fans. The scandal became deeply personal when considering its long-term toll on his health and family, as what began as performance enhancement spiraled into a dangerous dependency that nearly cost him his life. The pharmaceutical struggles that followed painted the portrait of a man battling addiction on multiple fronts long after leaving the ring.
The thing that stopped me, the thing that shut me down completely, where I said enough's enough, is when they hit me with the fentanyl stuff. They almost killed me with that stuff. So that's when I said, I'm done.
This wasn't just about recreational drug use, it was about a man so dependent on performance-enhancing and pain-killing substances that it nearly killed him. The scale of Hogan's pharmaceutical dependency was staggering, exposing both a healthcare system that had failed him and a personal battle far darker and more desperate than his fans could have ever imagined.
And they would give me these 280 fentanyl pills, and you'd have to stuff them under your gums in the morning and then at night. And they were giving me 15 of these 1,500 milligram lollipop things to eat during the day. That's how drugged up they had me.
The addiction to strong medicines trapped him in a never-ending cycle of pain, heavy drugs, and dangerous substances that nearly cost him his life, even leading to terrifying hallucinations. His own pharmacist admitted he had never seen anyone take so much fentanyl and still be alive, with prescriptions costing around $2,000 every 2 days, showing the massive damage to both his health and finances. When he spoke about his withdrawal, it was horrifying, with weeks of being locked away, extreme weight loss, and frightening visions that proved how close he came to losing everything. But among all these dark chapters, the most painful scandal came in 2007 when his son Nick drove recklessly, causing a crash that left his friend John Graziano with permanent brain damage.
It's just something that I pray to God every day for the strength to deal with, because it's hard. There's days where I can't even get out of bed.
What could have been a time of deep regret instead exposed the darker side of the Hogan family when recorded jail calls revealed Nick's shocking lack of care and cruel remarks about the victim and his loved ones, destroying not only their lives but also the image of a perfect family and showing the hidden dysfunction that would follow them for years. Hogan himself added to the outrage by making careless comments about the crash, even suggesting it was part of God's plan. And when combined with the family's wealth and fame, it created a public relations disaster that badly damaged his image as a family man and role model. The Graziano family's lawsuit and the eventual settlement of about $1.5 million only underlined the lasting impact of the tragedy and the family's failure to deal with it in a respectful way. The lies and exaggerations that had long defined Hogan's public image became harder to ignore as stories spread about his habit of making up details about his life and career, from claiming he wrestled 400 days in a single year to suggesting he was scouted by famous bands like Metallica, making his connection with the truth a running joke among fans and fellow wrestlers and steadily destroying his credibility. These were not harmless stories, but clear deceptions that made people question everything he had ever said, and even his political actions stirred more trouble when he openly backed Donald Trump and appeared at the 2024 Republican National Convention, where his sharp and divisive words pushed away many fans who once saw him as a figure of unity in American culture.
I look out and I see all the real Americans. I think about how Donald Trump, his family was compromised. When I look out there and I see Donald Trump, I think about how his business was compromised. But what happened last week when they took a shot at my hero and they tried to kill the next president of the United States? Enough was enough. And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother. Let Trumpomania rule again. Let Trumpomania make America great again.
Hogan's open role in politics turned many fans against him and added yet another group of people who had reasons to mistrust or dislike him, showing the same clear pattern that had followed Terry Bollea all his life, where he always placed his own benefit above loyalty, honesty, or even basic decency. While the wrestling world and the public tried to keep up with his endless scandals, one person was living through the pain from the inside, carrying the burden of being tied to such a divisive figure, and that was his daughter, Brooke Hogan. After years of seeing her father ruin friendships, betray colleagues, and surround the family with one controversy after another, she finally broke her silence with what became the ultimate betrayal. But what she revealed went far beyond family drama and painted a devastating picture of a man whose private behavior was worse than any public scandal and whose treatment of his own family exposed the truth behind the Hulkamania mask. The family's image first began to collapse during the highly publicized divorce between Hulk and Linda Hogan in 2009. And while the world focused on claims of cheating and fights over money, what really happened behind closed doors was far more disturbing. In her 2011 memoir, Linda accused Hogan of repeated physical abuse, describing incidents where he choked her, threw lamps, and pinned her down by the throat during heated arguments, painting a clear picture of a home ruled by fear and control. The divorce that followed revealed a web of hidden money and careful maneuvering, with Linda walking away with 70% of their liquid assets, 40% ownership of Hulk's companies, and a $3 million property settlement, while the real price was the collapse of family bonds that would never heal. The outcome left Hogan with barely $2.98 million in liquid assets, and he later admitted that the divorce nearly pushed him into bankruptcy, showing how his personal failures directly led to financial ruin. Yet it was not until March 2025 that the depth of the family's turmoil became clear when Brooke Hogan finally broke her silence with shocking revelations that permanently changed how the world viewed wrestling's most famous family. In a long Instagram post, Brooke revealed that she had endured severe verbal and emotional abuse since childhood, which often crossed the line into physical harm, describing a long pattern of manipulation and exploitation that stretched over decades. What made her claims even more crushing was the revelation that she had been treated as a pawn in family conflicts, frequently pressured to defend her parents in public, including during the 2015 scandal over Hulk's racist remarks. This manipulation was not limited to family matters, but reached into the very controversies that would shape her father's reputation, forcing her to act as the family's public shield while privately suffering from the same behavior she was told to excuse. The psychological damage of such treatment was enormous, as Brooke explained how she was expected to forgive the major blows to her career and personal life caused by her parents' actions while still being told to stand in front of the world and protect them. Brooke's choice to cut off all contact with both parents came from different reasons for each, making it clear that the abuse was not the fault of just one person, but the result of a toxic family system that failed to protect its most vulnerable member. Her allegations gained even more weight when she described in her own words the heavy psychological cost of growing up in such an environment, showing how the constant dysfunction inside the home combined with endless public scrutiny forced her to grow up far too quickly while carrying the burden of struggles that no child should have to endure.
Our family's been through a lot of crap, and I will say my dad, despite, it's hard to, have all your skeletons, pulled out of your closet and just waved in front of everybody's face and humiliated the world.
What stands out most is how Brooke was expected to remain loyal even while witnessing the very worst sides of her father, leaving her trapped between the natural love she felt for her family and the painful awareness of their toxic behavior, a conflict that created an unbearable struggle she carried with her for years.
It's hard, and everybody was like, oh, Brooke stands by her dad and this and that, and it's like, first of all, that's who I am. I'm loyal. Like, if you're honest with me, it doesn't matter. I will love.
This loyalty was carefully taken advantage of, with Brooke being forced to act as the family's public defender while secretly suffering from the very actions she was told to excuse, and the psychological damage of such manipulation cannot be overstated, because being pushed to protect the indefensible while being harmed by the same person creates a deep trauma that can last for generations. She explained how she had been pressured to defend her father during the scandal over his racist remarks, only to later realize she had been misled about the true nature of both his words and his character. The dysfunction inside the family went further than emotional and verbal abuse, spreading into financial exploitation and career sabotage. As Brooke revealed, she was repeatedly told that others were making money from her pain and embarrassment, showing how the family's drama was turned into profit at her expense. This use of family trauma as a business made the situation even more toxic, proving that even her suffering was treated as a source of revenue. The depth of the family's struggles became even clearer when Brooke spoke about her father's declining health and how it affected their relationship, with her detailed awareness of his medical procedures showing that despite all the abuse she had endured, she still cared about his well-being, even as their bond continued to fall apart.
We counted how many surgeries he's had in the last 10 years, and I think we're at 25.
Oh, God.
So he's had both shoulders scoped, and he had his his whole bicep and his bursa sac and his everything tied up in his shoulder like last year. That was a disaster. He got MRSA and it was like a big thing, so we had to go back in.
His physical decline, combined with years of substance abuse and the relentless stress of ongoing scandals, created the perfect storm that ultimately led to his death in July 2025. But what made the tragedy even deeper was Brooke's noticeable absence from WWE's tribute events, later explained by her admission that she had not even been invited. This deliberate exclusion showed the extent of the fractures not only within the Hogan family but also between Brooke and the wrestling industry itself, making it clear that she had been completely cut off from her father's professional legacy. The fact that her brother Nick was present while she was left out suggested that WWE had made careful choices about which family members they wanted to include in their narrative and which they did not. And for Brooke, this rejection during a time of grief added yet another layer of pain to an already devastating situation. The final conversation she shared with her father in September 2023 revealed the ultimate heartbreak of their relationship, as even after years of distance and abuse allegations, she told him she loved him. And though he offered an apology, the true meaning of that apology remained uncertain. This final exchange took place just 2 weeks before Hulk's wedding to Sky Daly, an event Brooke did not attend, which underscored how distant their relationship remained even in his final years. The details of that last conversation reveal the same painful dynamic that had always defined them, as Brooke reached out with genuine concern for his health and urged him to slow down. Yet he reportedly responded with coldness and showed little interest in meeting her children. It was a moment that summed up their entire relationship, with Brooke continuing to care despite years of mistreatment while Hulk stayed emotionally distant and self-centered, even in what turned out to be their last words to one another. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, keep the journey going by clicking on one of the suggested videos on your screen right now for more great content.